Greetings everyone, and welcome to another Halloween horror movie review. Today we'll be taking a look at a perennial classic, beloved by both comedy and horror fans alike. A titular example of how to seamlessly blend loving homage with hilarious parody. A seminal film that has influenced countless generations of filmmakers since. I'm of course talking about Mel Brooks' Young Frankenstein. Today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. So, 1974's Young Frankenstein is, of course, Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder's loving homage to the classic Universal Monsters horror films, specifically the first three Frankenstein films more than anything else. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know what I can say that hasn't already been said a million times before about it. I'll add my voice to the choir and say I love it. It's one of my all-time favorites. It probably is my favorite Mel Brooks film, actually. It draws most heavily on 1939's Son of Frankenstein, but you will see elements from Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein incorporated into it as well. And if you saw my review of Son of Frankenstein, one of the things I mentioned was this movie, and suggested the next time you watch it, for the 8 billionth time, do yourself a favor and go back and watch the first three Universal Monsters Frankenstein movies first, because I guarantee you will get so much more out of this movie. I mean, it's already hilarious on its own, but when you have that context fresh in your brain, you're able to see very clearly the specific moments that Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder are making fun of. And I think it makes it even better than it already is. You realize just how accurate a parody it is and how loving an homage it is as well. So Young Frankenstein is, of course, the story of Frederick Frankenstein, the grandson of the original Victor Frankenstein, who is trying to distance himself from the family legacy. I mean, everybody knows the story of the monster he created and so forth, but he doesn't want to have anything to do with that. He has taken up medicine as a profession. He is quite a skilled neurosurgeon, and when we first meet him, he's conducting a lecture to a group of medical students. So his grandfather, the Baron Beaufort von Frankenstein, has passed away, and as his inheritance has given Frederick his castle, his home, the place where it all happened. So he bids a temporary farewell to his fiancée, Elizabeth, and heads on a train to Transylvania. Now, of course, the original Frankenstein movies did not take place in Transylvania. In the commentary track for this, Mel Brooks talks about that, and he says, well, they decided to make it Transylvania just because everybody knows Transylvania is where all the monsters are. So it was just kind of playing into the public perception of these movies a little bit, even though he and Gene Wilder, of course, are intimately familiar with the actuality of where those movies took place. In fact, in Son of Frankenstein, the village is just called the Village of Frankenstein. Like the whole village is named after him, so yeah. So I don't need to summarize the whole plot for you. You guys all know it. I'm sure you've all seen it. And if you haven't seen it, what are you waiting for? Go see it. It's freaking hilarious. So we, of course, meet pronounced Igor, played by the always hilarious Marty Feldman. We meet the sweet, innocent German lab assistant Inga, played by Terry Garr. And then once we get to the castle, we, of course, meet Frau Blucher, played by the always hilarious Cloris Leachman. And of course, we also have Madeline Kahn as Frederick's fiancée Elizabeth. We have Kenneth Mars as Inspector Kemp, a spot-on parody of Lionel Atwill's character of Inspector Krug from Son of Frankenstein. And he really plays up the whole false arm thing, smacking it around, and it's quite funny. And one thing I love that they kept in was when Frederick and the Inspector are playing the dart game, which of course is a huge scene in the original Son of Frankenstein. They do have the bit where he jams all the darts into his arm. And I had seen this long before I saw the original Son of Frankenstein, so when I saw that bit in the Son of Frankenstein, I was like, oh my god, that was actually in the original. I thought it was just a bit that they did for Young Frankenstein. And see, that's why I say it's even better when you go back and watch the originals, because you'd be surprised how much of that stuff is just straight out of the originals. So much like in Son of Frankenstein, in Young Frankenstein, the inspector is keeping a pretty close eye on Frederick to make sure that he's not following in his grandfather's footsteps. Footsteps, footsteps, footsteps! And of course, Frederick has no intention of doing anything of the sort. I mean, sure, he's mildly curious about his heritage, but he really does not want to go down that path. Until he discovers the secret library. And in the secret library, he finds his grandfather's notes. And I love the title of the book. It's just called How I Did It. Which, of course, is a callback to Son of Frankenstein, where he finds his, well, father's notes in that case. And it's just called, you know, The Diary of Henry Frankenstein, or something fairly formal and important sounding like that. But, yeah, I just love how in Young Frankenstein it's just called How I Did It. Yeah, and I guess while we're on the subject, everybody has their favorite line from it, you know. Werewolf, their wolf, their castle. Why are you talking like that? I thought you wanted to. No, I don't want to. All right, suit yourself, I'm easy. Of course, the walk this way gag, which even Mel Brooks thought was a little too cheesy, but the way Gene Wilder and Marty Feldman played it, he thought it was funny, and test audiences thought it was funny, and then it became something he incorporated into a lot of his films afterwards. I love the fact that all of the dirtiest jokes are given to Inga, the most innocent, sweet character in the entire film, such as right off the bat, how she says, "Would you like a roll in the hay?" Of course, Inga being sweet and innocent means it quite literally. And then, of course, "What knockers? Oh, thank you, doctor." And talking about the necessary proportions of the creature, and it's like, oh, he would have an enormous Schwanzstücke. But in the commentary track, Mel Brooks talks about that, and he said that was a very deliberate decision on their part, was just to give all the dirtiest jokes to the most innocent character, because somehow that just made it funnier. So apparently there was quite a lot of ad-libbed moments as well that have since become classic moments. For example, when Frau Blucher... Stop that. Offers a late-night drink to Frederick as he's going to bed. The whole thing about, would you like some warm milk? And perhaps a brandy? Ovaltine. That entire bit was not rehearsed. It was not in the script. It was improvised on the spot by Cloris Leachman, and Gene Wilder, being the consummate comedy professional, played along with it perfectly. And I think that's one of the big reasons why Young Frankenstein works so well, is because here you had an ensemble of comedy actors, some of which had worked together before, some of which had not, but that were such consummate professionals and just had such experience and just instinctive sense of comic timing. They could not only take what was in the script and make it work and make it funny, but they could also contribute and add little moments like that. Apparently the original cut of Young Frankenstein was something like 5 hours long, and Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder were just like, oh God, what have we done? This is a mess. So they went and just did like crazy, brutal editing and cut it all down to what we now know. So, you know, a case of less is more, certainly. They took all the best bits and pieces and put it all together. Actually, another famous ad-libbed moment, we got to talk about Peter Boyle as the monster. Peter Boyle is an actor that I've always enjoyed. I loved him in that episode of The X-Files he did. I loved him as the villain in Outland with Sean Connery. And then, of course, he was the father in Everybody Loves Raymond, and just a really talented, funny actor. But one of those types of actors that could play anything. I mean, he was just so versatile. I mean, he could do comedy, he could do drama, anything you threw at him he could do and make it, you know, uniquely put his stamp on it. So, in the case of Young Frankenstein, he did kind of his own take on the monster. There's a few scenes where they very deliberately echoed Karloff. Like, for example, when Frau Blucher is playing the violin for the first time, and he's listening, and he's like plucking the notes out of the air. Remember my Frankenstein review a couple years ago, I was talking about that. Well, it's a very deliberate echo of that moment. And they wanted that specifically because it's like he's plucking them. It's like the notes are butterflies, you know, and he's trying to pluck them out of the air. But it was a nice little callback to that, and again, one of those little loving homage moments that echoes the original. But in terms of ad-libbing, one of the things that Peter Boyle contributed, well, the song and dance number, the Puttin' on the Ritz number, was originally Gene Wilder's idea. Mel Brooks didn't want to do it. He thought it was going over the top. He didn't think it was going to work. But Gene Wilder pushed for it, and so they did it. And they weren't quite sure how they were going to do the Puttin' on the Ritz song, so they just kind of, they worked out the choreography of the dance. And then as an ad-lib, when it gets to the Puttin' on the Ritz part, that's when Peter Boyle just yells out, "Puttin' on the Ritz!" And that was it. That's how they knew it was going to work, because it was just so ridiculous that you couldn't help but laugh. There's also another moment after all the chaos breaks out after the musical number where the monster's chained up. And the chains that he's in and the little window up at the top of the jail cell, it echoes exactly how the monster is tied up in The Bride of Frankenstein. So that was a really nice little callback that I noticed immediately. Like, oh, they did the exact same thing. And speaking of which, Mel Brooks actually found out at the time that Ken Strickfaden, the fella who had provided all of the laboratory equipment for the original Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein, was still alive and living not too far away from where they were doing the movie. So he went and talked to him and found that he actually still had all of the original equipment from the original movies stored away in his garage. And he was like, well, can we rent it from you? And he's like, sure. So they actually rented the original equipment from Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. Ken Strickfaden himself came out to the set. He set it all up for them, showed them how it all worked and everything. And then they added a few more things, like some more dynamos and switches and stuff, just to kind of flush it out a little bit. But a lot of the equipment that you see in the laboratory scene is from the original movie. I mean, talk about a stroke of luck. So it just adds that additional layer of authenticity to the homage, So my first time seeing this movie was not the most optimal of circumstances. It was when I was living in Selkirk, Manitoba, back in the early 90s. And my girlfriend and I, at the time, were kind of getting our feet wet with classic comedies. So we were renting a lot of stuff from the 60s and 70s that we hadn't seen before. And I'd suggested, well, why don't we rent Young Frankenstein? I've never seen it before. I've heard it's really funny. Let's check it out. So we rented it and brought it home, and we were watching it. And those of you who watched my Multimedia Chronicles Retro series might remember a two-part episode which detailed the events leading up to my leaving Selkirk. The long and the short of it is we kind of got in bad with some of the local toughs, and they tried to break into my apartment one night. But they actually attempted that twice. The first night had come and gone, the police were involved, and everything was fine, we thought. So we're just renting this movie, we're sitting there watching, we get about halfway through. The air conditioner's going because it's kind of hot that night. And suddenly we just hear, boom! And the air conditioner stops. And we realized that the guys had come back. So, again, called the cops. They got chased down and everything was fine. And then I checked the air conditioner the next morning and there was a big footprint pushed right into the back of the air conditioner. Yeah, so you can see that in the retro videos, which I won't link to. I'll leave it to you to find them. Anyway, needless to say, after having a second night of terror, it was quite nice to unwind with the remainder of Young Frankenstein. Since then, I have lost count of how many times I've watched this movie. In fact, even prior to doing this review, I watched it 2.5 more times. 2.5 because I started just watching it again. I was like, you know what? I've never listened to the commentary track on this. So I ran it back. I put the commentary track on with Mel Brooks and really enjoyed that. It was very informative and a lot of fun to listen to. And last weekend, my daughter Rosie was here and she asked to watch it again because she said, this is one of my all-time favorite comedies. And I was just like, proud daddy moment because I introduced her to this. So she wanted to watch it again, so we watched it again. And I was like, what? I'm not going to say no. I mean, I'll watch it over and over again. It's never not funny to me. The long and the short of it is, I've always enjoyed Young Frankenstein on multiple levels. I mean, certainly as the loving homage to the classic Universal Monsters movies that it is, and also just as a silly comedy. Because, I mean, the humor is very silly, but that's part of its charm. I think it's actually probably one of the more accessible Mel Brooks films for, the masses. I mean, some of his films have racier humor that may not be everyone's cup of tea, but I think this one is one of the more, I don't know, call it innocent comedies. There's a little bit of mildly suggestive humor, but it's innocently suggestive, Again, I think giving a lot of those lines to Inga was a good idea because it allowed them to kind of be a little bit subversive with that. But it's a movie that I think serves as a nice introduction to the sort of classic monster era because it calls back to so many moments from those classic movies, but at the same time has a bit of a modern feel to it, I guess. It's kind of an interesting hybrid. Like, it feels modern, but classic. I mean, Mel Brooks actually shopped it around to a couple of different studios. He originally shopped it to Columbia Pictures and said, well, I want to do this all in black and white. And he's like, well, no, we're not going to do it in black. We'll film it in color, and then we'll release it in black and white in some places. Like, no, because you're going to skunk me and only release it in color. So no, we're doing it in black and white. The other thing was they didn't want to give him as much money as he was sure that he needed to make the film. So he brought it to Fox, and Fox had a new studio head, read the script, loved Mel Brooks's films, and was like, yeah, we'll do it, and just tell us how much money you need, and we'll make it happen. So there you go. I always kind of wondered if he ever shopped it to Universal. I mean, it just seems like a given to me. I mean, he's parodying the Universal films, but I don't know. He didn't mention Universal in the commentary at all, so who knows. Speaking of loving homage moments, I have to mention Gene Hackman's scene as the blind man, which is a wonderful callback to the scene from Bride of Frankenstein. But it it plays around with it in a way that kind of it has the tenderness and the friendship of the original scene, but also a lot of funny gags based around the fact that the blind man is blind. He can't see. He's trying to be a gracious host, but he just keeps screwing it up by toasting and smashing the glass and pouring the hot soup in the monster's crotch and lighting his thumb on fire thinking it's his cigar. So apparently how that came about was Gene Hackman was doing another movie nearby, and I think he knew Gene Wilder, so they met for lunch, and he was like, "Hey, what are you guys working on?" It's like, "Oh, we're doing Young Frankenstein as a parody of the old Frankenstein movies." And he's like, "Have you got anything that I could do? I've been kind of wanting to try my hand at some comedy," because he'd only really done dramatic roles at that point. And they were like, "Yeah, sure, so maybe you could be the blind man." So they put him in as the role of the blind man, and he just killed it. Like, he was freaking hilarious. And apparently, another ad-lib, the line at the end where the monster runs away, bursts through the door and runs away, and the blind man comes out, and he's like, "Wait, where are you going? I was going to make espresso." The espresso line was an ad-lib as well. And apparently they cut to black very quickly because the entire crew just burst out laughing as soon as he said that. And they could not do a second take because everyone just kept laughing. But, and also apparently it was one of those cases where it was like the happiest set imaginable. Everyone just had so much fun making the movie that by the time they finished shooting everything on the script, Gene Wilder came to Mel Brooks and said, "You know what? We're all having so much fun here. I don't want it to end." So they actually wrote a couple of additional scenes just to keep filming a little bit longer and extend the experience a little bit more. You just do not hear about that happening anymore these days. You always hear about troubled sets and troubled productions and all these horrible experiences. But here's the complete opposite of that. This was a group of people who had worked together before, well, some of them had, and had not just a great working relationship and a great professional relationship, but we're also terrific friends. And that's why they did so many movies together, because they were just great friends. And also, creatively speaking, you get Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder in a room together, and that's just an explosion of comedy creativity. Amazing stuff. So Young Frankenstein is definitely an electric combination of talent that I think is going to be well regarded for many, many years to come. And rightly so. It's a wonderful film. It's so much fun. And as I say, I think it's one of the more accessible Mel Brooks movies, and a wonderful gateway movie for younger viewers to be introduced to the classics in kind of a fun way. Alrighty, that is it from me to you for now. I guess I did have a few things to say. Hope you enjoyed. As always, if you'd like to add Young Frankenstein to your collection, you will find some Amazon links in the description below. Thank you very much for your support. Really appreciate you guys using my Amazon links. So big thanks to you for watching. Big thanks to my Patreon sponsors. Be sure to catch me on Twitch. I stream just about every day. And we'll see you next time. Until then, Blooker! Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Halloween horror movie review. A titular film that is beloved by many. Hold on. What is... Gotta have seminal and titular in there. So, let's see. Perennial, seminal, and titular. Greetings, everyone. A titular example of how to do fucking things good. Yes. Okay. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Halloween... No, I'm blinking like crazy. Blink, 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 blink. Greetings, everyone. A seminal example. God damn it. Determined to use these suggestive words. So perennial is basically favorite. Seminal is influential. Titular is a shining example. Perennial, titular, and seminal. Greetings, everyone. A seminal film which has influenced countless generations of comedy and parody filmmakers for a long time. Damn it, I almost had it. Fuck off, small-penised one. Greetings, everyone. A seminal film that influenced countless filmmakers since in how to do a parody right. I'm, of course, talking about Mel... So close! Okay. Want to get it in one take. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Halloween horror movie review. Today we'll be taking a look at a perennial classic, blending parody and fucking shit. Alright, here we go. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Halloween horror movie review. Greetings, everyone. Hey, we've only got 15 more to do after this, so yeah, let's go. Greetings, everyone. Okay. See, I'm just being method, because apparently Gene Wilder had a lot of trouble keeping a straight face during most of the takes of the film. So, I'm just channeling my inner Gene Wilder. Yeah, I know Gene Wilder. He was a fucking genius. Greetings, everyone. A titular classic. Greetings, everyone. A titular classic showing how it's possible to seamlessly blend things. Greetings, everyone. A seminal film that has influenced countless filmmakers and parody filmmakers ever since. Because parody filmmakers aren't real filmmakers. Fuck me. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Halloween horror movie review. Today we'll be taking a look at a perennial classic, popular amongst both horror and comedy fans. Fuck, no. Don't like it. No, sir, I don't like it. That I suggested doing yourself a treat. And before you watch Young Frankenstein for the 8 billionth time, go back and watch some other fucking movies. Jesus Christ, there's more than just this movie out there. What's the matter with you? Broaden your horizons a little, why don't you? Gonna be winging it here a little bit, because honestly don't know what I can say about this film that hasn't been said a billion times before by other people, so just gonna put my own stamp on it, I guess. Specifically the first 3 Frankenstein films more than anything else. And it's great, so check it out. You'll love it. I saw this long before I had seen Young Frankenstein. Oh my god. Aneurysm! Did I say grandfather or father? Shit. God damn it. In Young Frankenstein, the inspector is keeping a close eye on Frederick, because he doesn't want him falling. So much like in some... Holy shit. You know, a lot of Mel Brooks movies are kind of known for their... That's what they're known for. And apparently, there was quite a lot of ad-libbing as well. So, they had a pretty well laid out script, but there was ad-libbing as well. So, my first time seeing this movie was not the most optical of... Optical? So, if you'd like to add Young Frankenstein to your collection, I will, of course... Greetings, everyone. 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 Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another Halloween horror movie review. Today we'll be taking a look at a perennial classic, beloved by both comedy